So guys, welcome to Tuvix, Star Trek Voyager episode. Many feel it's one of the most controversial episodes of Star Trek. Not just Star Trek Voyager, it's a Star Trek Voyager episode. And Tuvix has become sort of that sticking point, a debate for many fans. Yay or nay, pro and con. Now, about a week ago, the timing was interesting. I just thought of making a video about Tuvix. Let me take a crack at it. And then just recently, Kate Mulgrew and Tim Russ, Captain Janeway and Tuvok, were at a Star Trek convention in New Jersey, and they talked about how they felt about the episode, their feelings, and Kate Mulgrew defending Janeway's decision and such, and then Tuvok obviously being one of the co-stars along with Ethan Phillips. That was the character that became Tuvix. Okay, so if you're familiar with the episode, fine. If you're not, the episode has the crew members Tuvok and Neelix fused into one being after a transporter accident. And then Janeway has to sort of make a decision. Should she split them apart again, essentially destroying Tuvix, or save her original crew members? And so when the new being is fused and formed and merges, he calls himself, or they, I guess, because Neelix and Tuvok, they call themselves Tuvix. So now many people feel that Janeway should not have done this, that she should not have destroyed the murdered, killed Tuvix by splitting them apart again, or restoring. I look at it as restoring the proper balance between these two life forms, these two humanoids, these two beings. Okay, so now here's my first point. It's an accident. Both Neelix and Tuvok never asked for this. Sort of like Siamese twins, right? One can argue or compare that Tuvix is the ultimate example of Siamese or co-joined twins. And as we know, all the complications that arise from that. I think most co-joined twins, right, would argue that they would want to lead separate lives. So now what if down the road, the Neelix half or the Tuvok half decides that being part of Tuvix is not great at all? That they don't want to no longer be co-joined. Would it be too late for the doctor or anyone else to help or assist in the splitting again? Also, people forget, and I just rewatched the episode. People forget that it's not just Tuvok and Neelix, it's also the orchids. These alien flowers, these orchids they find on a planet. So now that's also part of them. Now, I'm not even kidding here. Does the orchids have rights? Can the orchids somehow influence the ultimate decision? If you really want to get meta, sort of philosophical about it, orchids have a right to live too. They're life forms, and if they're alien and they have some kind of interesting influence, there's 3 life forms now, not just 2. All right, so did the accident neurologically impair or damage them? And again, it's just a point I raise. Did this accident influence their liking or preference to be co-joined in the new persona Tuvix? Because after major accidents or trauma, a person's personality, their health, their mental faculties can change. What of that element? It's never really brought up. The doctor says, well, they're fine, they're in perfect tip-top shape. Really? Well, it's only happened, a couple days ago, a week? What about down the line? All right. Now, what of Tuvok and Neelix's family and friends? Don't they matter? What about Tuvok's loved ones and Neelix's loved ones and friends? Aren't they important? Because of this new life form, this new humanoid life form combination. What about Tuvok's wife and children? What about Neelix? He ultimately goes back to his Talaxian family, right? He chooses not to go on to Earth with the rest of the crew. He goes back to the Talaxians. So when Neelix goes back to his Talaxian people, what if his Tuvok side happily agrees, knowing that he'll never see his wife or kids again? I don't think he would, right? Well, And then again, down the road, what if complications arose down the road, which caused the new Tuvok's great pain or otherwise medical care that the doctor couldn't heal? Because, he didn't foresee it, because in the beginning, it's all well and good, they seem fine, but what about another couple months, a year? It's a new humanoid species, right? Essentially, how could the doctor really know? And it's funny, too, because he says to Janeway, the doc, oh, they're fine. How do you know? These are two, it's Vulcan and it's Talaxian, and they're new now. So it's a new species. So do you really know what that species, their vital signs could be so good or, so balanced? And now, finally, many say that Janeway murdered Tuvix, right? That's the con to the pro. Now, I say a case can be made that Tuvix wanted to murder Neelix and Tuvok. So this new life form says, I'm the only thing that matters, and Tuvok and Neelix don't, right? Two humanoids, two life forms, two people spent decades of life separate. They have family and friends that they want to be with again, I would imagine, right? Tuvix is now priority. Tuvix is the only thing that matters, not Neelix and Tuvok, who have been separately spending their life decades and decades alone. Okay? So for me, Janeway's decision is not only just or right, but it's the most logical, right? It's the most reasonable, logical, rational thing, even though, yes, it's troubling to her. Now, in the end, I was thinking perhaps Voyager's producers could have kept Tuvok around for another episode or two. Not only would that have given Janeway more time to, think about it and meditate on it, but the whole sci-fi spectacle, right, of having two life forms fused into one. I mean, I always think of The Fly, of course. I'm sure that was somewhat in the evolution and the development of this, the classic The Fly horror movie, sci-fi, and then the Jeff Goldblum, David Cronenberg remake in the 80s. But maybe in the end, it's all about who matters more, right? Does anyone matter more, the new life form, than the other two, the existing ones? The new life form Tuvix is brand new. Tuvok and Neelix have had decades again to lead separate lives, right? So all the decisions they have to make on their own and live separate lives, right? And does the accident that merged the two into one with unknown consequences down the road matter more? That's what I think. That's the crux for me. This is a new life form, Tuvix, and yeah, he seems fine, and the crew like him and all. But there's that one great scene with Janeway and Kes, and Kes is like, you know what? This might sound really bad or selfish, but I want Neelix back, right? I want my Neelix back, and like I've said, Tuvok's wife probably wants him back, and he wants her back and the kids. So what do you think? Give us your thoughts and your feedback. I mean, in rewatching it again, I really can see both sides in one way, but I am firmly on the side of Janeway made the right decision, and we've got three beings, two much older, live much longer lives, have much more consequences than the new kid on the block, which is Tuvix. So give us your thoughts, give us your feedback. Hope you're enjoying, hope you're subscribing. See you soon.